Hello, welcome to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
I'm Tera.
And I'm Ty.
Yay! Welcome back to the show, Ty.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, how's it been going? It's been a hot minute since we connected and seeing how all the writing is going and all the books and ideas that you have brewing.
Last time I was on your podcast, we were waiting for book 2 to come out, and now I'm waiting for book 4 to come out. So that's kind of exciting.
Can you believe it's been almost 2 years?
No, it's bananas. I mean, it's especially crazy because I live in this world where my manuscripts last 6 months, well, 8 months with like editing and reviewing and all that stuff. But like I write for 6 months, turn it in, and then 2 months later I get it back and I review to make sure everything is correct and the audio narrator said everything correctly. And so all of a sudden I'm finding myself like, oh, I'm turning book 5 in at the end of this month and then starting book 6. And that is mind-boggling to me. I can't believe it.
I'm glad you brought up the writing timeline and stuff, because now that you have 3 books under your belt and you have another book, 4th book, right? Mm-hmm. Coming out very soon.
Yes. January 24th, Convergence of Gods.
Awesome. It sounds very intense.
It is.
I was about to ask, what is that about?
So books 1 through 3, The Bench, The Favorite, and The Shadowless are all in the same universe and just different timelines. Book 4, Convergence of Gods, is 3 short stories that follow these characters that kind of initiate or are there at the start of this major event that unites all 4 of those books. So it's called the Neo-Pagan Wars. It's mentioned in each of them very briefly. And then the 4th one is like, okay, here we go. And they are intense because I apologize to my characters in the dedication, actually, of book 4. I say that I'm sorry for all the things that I put you through.
Oh, God. No, so I was actually reading The Shadowless, or not The Shadowless. I was reading The Favorite last night because the first time we interviewed, I had read The Bench. And the weather here has been dark. I was up late reading it, couldn't put it down. There was like the wind was hitting furniture against the house, and like 75% of this book, the first 75% felt like a horror novel to me. I was like reading under the covers and so scared. It just had that really eerie atmosphere, and I had to figure out what was going on. And then that last 25% is like where that strong science fiction part comes out, and it was so good. Like I have been you're so talented, and your stories are so enjoyable. So
thank you.
You definitely. So this one, I can't remember what time the first book, The Bench, was based, but this one was definitely like, I felt like it was at least 30 years in the future, right?
So yeah, so it's just a little bit beyond. The Bench is like 80 years after today. It's technically 80 years after this Neo-Pagan War, but that's like 60 to 80 years after today. So there's technology there. There's no like spaceships or aliens, anything like that. It's just like great technology that's developed, and we've remained more or less the same. And The Favorite is before that, but 20 years in the future, something that could be today if you didn't know any better.
Yeah. No, the whole premise behind this renewable resource that they were digging into is very intriguing. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. That'll come into play later, unfortunately for everyone.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to the 3rd book to see where this goes. So,
yeah. The 3rd book is like 200 years in the future. So it's very different.
Oh, that'll be cool. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about timeline for writing these stories. So with 3 books now under your belt with the 4th on the way, what does the feedback process look like? And do you have like a little team or a couple people that read it and give their feedback, and then the revisions are based on that? Or what does that overall cycle kind of look like?
Yeah, so I have a writers group that we meet about once a month when things are slow. We haven't met since August. And what I'll usually do is we'll meet, I'll read one chapter or like 10 pages of the book, get their feedback, see kind of their thoughts. And usually I try and pick these points that are really these points in the book that are really important either to the story or just I find really valuable. Like I want an emotional response from this thing. And I'll get their feedback and kind of see, did you have the response that I wanted? Is there a way to make it stronger? Is it too heavy handed? And then based on their feedback, go back into the story and edit it a little bit. I also, with this 5th book, I've done a little bit different. I have a friend that had the idea and he wanted me to write it, and it fit really well into the kind of my sci-fi theory of where I wanted stories to go. And so I've been sending him chapters. Every time I finish a chapter, I'll send him a chapter and he'll read it, give me feedback. And so that's been really different, but also really good because he's had some, as the author, I'm kind of like, can't see the forest for the trees. It's like, I'm so immersed in the story that someone coming from outside may not either view or read or understand what I'm trying to portray as well as me, because it's all in my brain. So it's been really good to have him say, I don't know what you mean at this point, or this is a little bit confusing, or this is great. And that's been really good. And then once I get all of that, once I finish the story with feedback, I'll go back through, and this is what I'm doing for book 5 right now. I'm going back through, and I call it editing, but realistically, I'm fleshing it out. So I've got every scene that I find relevant or that's important on the page. I like this one's at 108,000 words, and so I know that for the most part the story's there. But I may need, I forgot to describe the main character in the first chapter, and so that's kind of important. I should probably go back and do that, or describe the weather, or it doesn't make sense for this scene to be here. Maybe I need to move it a chapter later or something like that. And so then I'll go back and edit. But a lot of times what I'm doing is fleshing out these things. I'll leave myself little notes and say, make sure you describe what the temperature is like here because it comes into play later, or something like that. And so I fill out all that stuff. I recognize all the notes, I complete them, and then I'll do just kind of a blank read through where I read through the story as if I'm just someone reading this for the first time, and make sure that things make sense. Are there any grammar or just errors out there, and correct those? And then I send them to my editor, because what I want is my editor to get it and be able to have not just fresh eyes on it, but also the perspective that I've fixed everything that I could fix. And what I really need is a very critical eye of someone who hasn't read this story for 6 months, And so she's always really wonderful.
So giving them a more seamless reading experience, so they're not like zeroing in on the technical parts and can look at more of the developmental story stuff.
Exactly.
I like that.
A lot of times she'll give feedback of like, this, I don't know what you're trying to say with this sentence. And for me, it made total sense. But from a reader's perspective, if it doesn't make sense to her, it's definitely not going to make sense to anybody else. So I'll go in and I'll change that kind of stuff. So there's some of that, but it's really, really good. And my editor is fantastic.
What is this 5th book that you're working on?
So it's called Eden Vertex. It's totally separate from Dadirri. It's called the Dominus Trilogy. Book 1 is called Eden Vertex. It'll come out next summer. And it's just the story of it is true sci-fi, spaceships, aliens, lasers, that kind of thing. But
fun.
It follows this guy who is essentially a diehard employee of this corporation, right? And they kind of have the monopoly on space travel, on weapons, on ships, all this kind of stuff. But they're really, really good. They're a really good company, and they're trying to help these broken down or really, really downtrodden people groups. They bring them into this group called the Coalition, and they offer medical aid and supplies and technology and all this kind of stuff. And really what they're doing is they're just trying to bring everyone up to speed so that they can be a functioning part of this society. And what Cal, the main character, recognizes as he goes through the story is things aren't always the way that they look. And his perspective on the main kind of theme is humans versus non-humans, or nani's as they're called. He and other humans are like, we're the best because we're helping you. You guys should be grateful. But they don't treat nani's very well. And so when the nani's start kind of not fighting back necessarily, this isn't that kind of a book, but they start pointing out like, yeah, we're here in your society, but you treat us like crap. That's not fun. He begins to recognize like, oh, are there other areas of my life where I have blind spots that I've never really noticed? So it's been really fun to write. It's much more complex than I've written before. There's a big cast of characters. And so that's been a challenge.
Yeah, I was going to say, it definitely does sound more complex. And has this been an idea that's been stewing in the back of your mind, and you're, finally acting on that idea and seeing where it goes?
Kind of, yeah. So I got the original idea from him, but I was already playing with this universe that I wanted to create, and they just kind of fit together really easily. So his idea was really, I want an allegory for modern religion compared to just like really it's modern Christianity in America compared to just global religion, and just this idea that, you know, most of the time that the church today is like, we're going to save everybody and they're going to be thankful. It's a lot like, from my perspective, when new foster parents go into foster care, they're like, I'm going to be your new mom and you're going to love me for it. And really it's, they're going to hate you because they want their mom, and you're trying to do something good, but your motivation and the way that you kind of go about it is wrong. And so this is an allegory for that. And a lot of other stuff that kind of plays into it. But it's been really fun to write and be like, you know, I really hate this about either how I was raised evangelical or what I see happening in the evangelical church today. Let's write that into the story and like turn it on its head and totally blow it up. You know, it's been really fun.
You're not worried about pissing anyone off?
Oh, I hope I do.
I love it.
So Ty, you mentioned earlier about like your kind of process and going back over like the audiobooks and making sure people pronounce things right. And I use the audiobooks to like pronounce characters' names, and Sandra gets on to me all the time for mispronouncing names. I'm like, but that's what's in the audiobook. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, like, hopefully authors are going back through the audiobook and making sure that these are correctly pronounced.
So for me, I have to send an audio Bible, which is my recording of how I say these words.
Oh,
and
cool.
So for especially like this one and Convergence, there's a lot of words that are like not usual English words. And so there was a lot that I had to be like, this is how you say, you know, this character's name or this location or this, like in this one, this planet. And the narrator does a really good job of doing them correctly, which is really fun.
I'm trying to remember back to like 2 years ago. You didn't have the audiobook out for the bench like at the time,
Right.
Did you?
No, it was on its way.
What did that whole process look like with getting these audiobooks started? Because I have been reading it more and more, and I love having audiobooks available.
Yes, the audiobooks are part of my contract. So they hire, I could do them myself. And I've had several people be like, oh, I would love to listen to you read the book. And it's like, I mean, it would be great. But in addition to writing the next book and editing the previous book, I would also have to record the previous book. And that's too much for me.
Yeah.
And so they said, you can absolutely do it yourself, or we'll just put it as part of like your contract, where we'll find the same narrator for each of your stories. And I went through a process of finding, like, there were essentially auditions where they sent me 3 different people that they thought matched the kind of timbre and the meter that I wanted for my book. And then I picked one out of that group. And he's been, for books 1, 2, and 3, has been the narrator for them. And book 4, I'm assuming that he will be, but I haven't turned or got anything back from him. I don't know where he's at on it, which is fine.
With these books and having the audiobooks available, have there been any book conventions or conferences and stuff that you've gone to, or any other events that you've done to start, getting your work out there and kind of connecting with other writers and, I don't know, voice actors too, perhaps? I don't know.
Yes. So I've tried really hard. I've done a couple of signings locally, like at Barnes & Noble. The one in Rogers is really, really awesome. And they told me to contact them whenever the 4th one comes out, because they want to do another signing. I did another one when Shadowless came out. The one in Fayetteville is not as, they're like, yeah, we can do consignment, but we don't really do signings down here. And it's like, okay, whatever. I've done a couple of signings at Once Upon a Time Books. I used to be the youth pastor for the owner of that shop. And so I have stayed in contact with them. And then I just got word from Pearl's Books down in Fayetteville, that I'll do a signing in January with another local sci-fi author. And so I'm really excited about that.
Awesome.
Over the summer, I went to Chicago for the American Librarians Association, annual thing, and did a book signing there. And there were like tons of people there. It was, I had 60 books and I ran out of them in about 5 minutes. And
That's
it was really
amazing.
Cool. I got a lot of screen time there, and I hope that kind of will feed into at least more people becoming aware of my work and wanting to read it. But it was really fun. It was a good experience.
Yeah. Did you get to connect or meet anyone that you were familiar with there?
I did. I met the author of Bones. It's a kids.
Kathy Wright.
It's yes. It was really fun. Adina Menzel was there. I got to meet her and her sister. They wrote a book together, and there were a couple other like comic book authors that I wasn't super aware of, or like I had heard of them before, but I didn't know a lot of their work. But it was really exciting. But Dylan Thomas, who is on TikTok, a super popular bacon dude,
Yep.
he came by and got a signed book, and got to
That's
talk to him for a
cool.
few minutes. It was very
That's
cool. It was a lot of
awesome.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. He ran out. I was in line with my other friends to get a signed book by him, and we were the last in line. And we got to the end, and he had run out of books, and it was just me and another friend. And he was like, let me get your information, and I'll send you a copy and a signed book." And I was like, "Okay, that's great. Well, thank you." And so a couple weeks later, I got the book in the mail, and I just expected like B. Dylan Thomas as the signature. But he was like, "Ty, thank you so much for your book. I can't wait to start reading it." And so it was personalized, and that meant so much to me. It was really, really cool. So that was kind of a really fun interaction. It was just a fun day. It was a couple of days.
That is awesome. Do these events like this, do they recharge you or drain you?
I love it. Depends because I loved being there, and it was really energizing to be around other authors, and there were voice actors there. There were narrators for books and movies that were there, like documentaries and stuff. Just a huge,
cool. Yeah.
It ran the gamut. It was really fun. But at night, I found myself being like, my social battery had just run out because I was on all day long. I was like, "Hi, I'm an author. Here's my book. Here's my publisher. Like, hey, let's either talk shop or like, what kind of books do you like?" And I was that for 8 hours. And then, my friend from college lives in Chicago, and he was out of town. So I just stayed at his house, and I went back, and I was just like, like turn the TV on and just zone out. And normally I kind of like to hang out, but it's energizing while I'm there. But then afterwards, I kind of like flip the switch and like, okay, it's time. I can be like not excited and crazy, Ty.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned getting back from these conferences and just wanting to kind of veg out and recharge your energy. So with it being in the midst of the holidays, it's, we're between Christmas and New Year's, and then balancing writing and spending time with your family. What are some of the things that you do to kind of not just refill your energy, but to get motivated again and kind of refill that creativity well with ideas?
It's really tricky. I'm honestly, like, I struggle with it. It's very hard. We're adopting one of our foster kids next week. And so that's kid number 5. And so I'm taking all of, like, I've got a lot of mental load, and my wife does a wonderful job. She's also got a lot of mental load, but like balancing eating healthy and working out and writing and being dad and being husband and then being just like myself is really, really challenging. But I found the best way for me to really just get back into the writing mode, because I've come to recognize that being an adult at this stage of my life, I'm always tired. And so it doesn't matter if I go to bed early or if I wake up early or if I go to bed late and wake up early or whatever. Like, I'm always like, that's just how it is. So it doesn't matter if I stay up till midnight and get up at 5, I am just as tired as if I went to bed at 8 and got up at 6. It doesn't even matter. So I've accepted that. So there are some mornings where I'll get up and I'll go to the gym at 5 and work out, and I feel really good and I feel great the rest of the day. And I write during lunch, and I get home and I do the dad thing, and I put the kids to bed and I read to them, and we snuggle and we kiss and I love you so much. We pray together, and then it's good night. And then Kanye and I hang out. And then there are days where I wake up at 7 o'clock and we rush around and get the kids to school at 7:30, and I have a meeting over lunch, and I get home and I'm tired and cranky and the kids are screaming and it's World War III, and we put the kids to bed, and I'm like, fuck this. This sucks ass. There are those days too. So it really depends, but I do know that just writing, like just diving in, makes me feel a lot better, even when I don't want to do it.
I am marveling at that you have any days that are not World War III with that many children. Like, I have 2, and it's like a 90% ratio of World War III days in my house, and I'm marveling.
Even one, I'm just like, do you want to pick this battle right now?
Right?
Like, Michael right now is testing my patience.
Boys.
They're the worst.
You mentioned working out. Okay, you have to explain the 75 hard thing to me. What is it? And did you Complete it.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to sound like I drank the Kool-Aid. 75 Hard is like a mental challenge for 75 days where you have a task list each day that you have to complete or you fail. I did finish it. Kanye and I both finished it, and it was a challenge. It was hard. So every day you have to work out twice for 45 minutes. They can't be like an hour and a half workout counts for both. So 2 45-minute workouts, a gallon of water, you read 10 pages in some kind of self-improvement book. You take a progress picture, no alcohol, no cheat meals. And then there's one other thing. I don't remember what it is right now. But yeah, you do that every single day. And it was a challenge. It was really hard. But Kanye and I decided that every day after the kids would go to bed, we would go on a walk around the neighborhood. And so at like 9 or 10, 11, sometimes 12, we'd go for a 45-minute walk. And it was actually really valuable because it was finally time for us where we weren't on our phone, we weren't vegging in front of the TV, where we either just talked about our days, we talked about what tomorrow would look like what's the schedule. We talked about important stuff going on in our lives. Some nights were awkward because we were in the middle of a fight and we still had to spend 45 minutes together. Some nights were we need to address this issue in our relationship or with our kids or whatever. But it provided 45 minutes of time where we really genuinely had to we just had to do it. And so I would work out on my own. Every now and then we'd meet at the gym and work out together, but it was awesome. And we're got to do it again in January. And I loved it.
75 days. Yeah.
I challenged Sandra on like my watch because I got a new watch, and I challenged her for this week, and I have forgotten to wear my watch every day this week. So she is winning this challenge because I am like not at all. I don't think I could even make it through like one day of that challenge, Ty. So
that's fine.
I don't know. I don't know.
It was fun.
Maybe it's the same for you, Ty, but it's like I was not being physically active at all. And then I just started like almost a month ago now doing like a 45 minutes of exercise every single day. And it just makes me have so much more energy. It's hard in the beginning getting into that mode, but then it just helps feed everything else that you're doing too. So I'm sure it's the same as you.
I felt during the workout, I'd be thinking about either my writing or like what I need to fix in it or whatever. So it really did provide some time for me to be not necessarily alone because, you're surrounded by everybody, but I was allowed to be in my own thoughts. I didn't have to be dad. I didn't have to be husband. I didn't have to be employee. I didn't really even have to be writer. So I could just get into whatever I was listening to, do the workout and then call it good. Or I could use that time to really kind of roll around what I needed to in my head. It was fantastic. And I've become Kanye calls me a gym rat now. And I don't mind because I actually
Ty Carlson, the gym rat.
I know, right? Nerdy little skinny wimpy little Tyrell.
You're gonna start seeing the male main characters kind of change their profile.
Getting a little buffer.
Getting a little more buff.
I hate that you say that because Cal in Eden Vertex is that. He's like this strong buff, like secret, like
You're like, now that I know how this feels, I want that life.
Oops. I outed myself.
Speaking of buff men, Tera, you had a question. Would you ever consider writing like a romantasy type of book?
I was like, what question is this, Sandra? Like, what are you throwing me under the like?
Oh man, romantasy. I would consider it. Sure. It would probably be bad because I would be just stuck in my perspective, but
I remember last time, I think it was last time, or it was just a conversation after that, where you were writing a sex scene and it was,
oh God,
like, I don't want to say awkward, but I feel like you thought it was awkward.
How much heartburn has this caused you?
Listen, it's totally different when you can be academic about it, but you have to make the reader feel the emotion that two people are feeling in that instance. And I found myself, I didn't intend to go there, and I was just writing, and it's in the bench. I was just writing, and then I was like, oh, we're going, okay, all right, we're going to go there. And so I wrote it, and I've gotten great feedback from people. I didn't want it to be this erotic, like raunchy scene. I wanted it to be a really sweet way for these two characters to connect, and I was successful in that. But yes, I get very embarrassed when I start talking about sex scenes in my books. There is not a single sex scene in The Favorite or The Shadowless or Eden Vertex. So
True. Reading the favorite, there was no sex scenes. There were intimate moments, and just there was ups and downs between two people, which I always love how you depict that in these marriages. And like there are so many valleys and peaks. And so I really appreciate that. But no, at any one moment, I never thought that like the sex in The Bench was gratuitous or anything. Like it had a point, right?
Yeah. That was the goal. Like it has to lead from point A to point B. And if sex is the way that we get there, I think for that scene and for that instance, it really was the only way for it to work. And I'm glad that I wrote it. It was a sweet little bit. Yeah.
It's an experience.
Yeah. I was talking to a romance writer on TikTok the other day, and she was doing a lot. We were doing a co-live, and she was telling me that she wanted to have me read some of her erotic scenes on the live because I was getting so worked up just talking about writing erotic scenes, and I did not. I was like, absolutely not. I will not debase myself.
I think that those are some like really funny TikToks that I've seen, and we are going to make David read some erotic scenes.
Oh yes. I'm totally cool talking about sex with my friends or with my wife or whatever. And even just but you get me reading someone else's perspective and what they've written and the specific words they use for certain things. And it's just like, I'm read.
Well, and some of those are very, very raunchy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I can't. I can't.
But there's your answer, Tera. I mean, would he shoot it down writing romantasy?
I mean,
no. Like he's open to new experiences.
So you could do like a children's version to where it's not so much, because like Carly likes reading those like kind of books, but I don't trust her with like an ACOTAR.
Wait.
Okay. Like I'm talking like kid, like
I'm turning so red right now.
Not sex scenes, obviously. This is not coming out right. And
so you want me to write a children's sex scene? It sounds like
no.
I'm very
I was like,
confused.
This isn't It by Stephen King.
Yes. Oh my God.
No,
the orgy scene at the end of It.
The child orgy scene in It. It's crazy.
Okay. Yeah, 100% on
I'm talking
heroin
like
when we did that.
Like you were discussing like the romance as opposed to the eroticism.
Yeah. It is.
Like,
I think I totally could do that. 100%. My problem is that I don't think in like most romantic books are like small town girl meets big city boy or the reverse. And that happens. My brain would be like, oh, but secretly he wants to kill her and use her bones in like an experiment.
Like, not to throw out my daughter's like personality, but that would be the book she wants to read.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, all right. Well, now I know what the next book. What's the 6, 7?
I have an audience built in for you.
Well, okay, so here's an idea that I've had rolling around in my head for a long time about this. It's going to totally spoil the whole book, but this older couple lives together. They're married. They love each other. And this new single mom moves in next door, and she's got 2 kids. And the kids like learn to love this older couple, and they're really, really sweet. And they babysit the kids for the mom while she's at work, and they spend time and they bake cookies and all this kind of stuff. But the mom begins to overhear the older husband being really verbally aggressive with her and controlling her and telling her like, you cannot do this. You're not going to, I'm not going to have you, blah, 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 blah. So the single mom begins to think that the older woman's in an abusive relationship. And it turns out that the older woman's actually just like a soul-sucking youth vampire. And she wants to get the kids as youth for herself. And she's going to kill the kids in order to do that. And the old man knows that. And so he's, trying to love her without letting her kill the kids. So
this sounds right up your alley, Tera.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that would be something both me and Carly would enjoy.
Very supernatural-esque.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, and she's definitely into the supernatural, but like some things I'm like, I can't let you no.
Our 14-year-old wanted to read a scary story last night. And I was like, bud, I don't do scary stories. Like I don't, Pet Sematary, The Influence. I've read them, but they're mostly audiobooks. I don't really want you reading them anyway. And he was like, please, I just want to get scared. And I was like, hold up, you're also the same kid that has night terrors whenever you watch like Stranger Things. Okay, so I don't want that rolling around in your head. He was like, no, I'll get over it. So I was like, you know what, fine, start it. You can go get it. It was in the garage, and so he couldn't find it. So I kind of got off the hook there. But I'm just like, dude, I don't want you reading horror yet. You are kind of a scaredy cat. I love you, but you're a scaredy cat.
So Carly loves horror movies, and I'm not a horror movie person. Like, I get scared. But I will sit here and watch true crime with her all day. And people make fun of me because like I can do true crime, but I can't do horror movies.
See, I'm the opposite. Like, I can't do true crime. It's real stuff. Why on earth? I know the world is disgusting and scary. Why do I want to? I don't want to hear the stories about it. No way. Give me a scary clown that lives in the sewers. Fine, I'll be good. No, thank you. No.
Well, now that we've given you ideas for what you should be writing, that's always fun, right? When people are telling you what to write.
Yes.
Super helpful, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Out of this whole writing journey, what would you say is the best part of it? Like, what is the most rewarding part to you? And then what is something that you just absolutely dislike about it, if you're being honest with yourself?
So it's really easy for me to know what the worst part of it is. And that is, like, I'm a big ideas person. So like the idea that I just gave you, I've had rolling around in my head for a couple of years now. But when I go to write it, I have to like set up the story. I have to write about the setting. I have to tell you what color her hair is, that her eyes are blue. Like, it's so tedious to go into the details, and I hate it. Like, I genuinely, going through Eden Vertex right now, I hate it. It's like, oh my God, I forgot to say that they're on the street and not just floating out there in space, you know? It's annoying. But on the reverse side, the really cool thing is probably my favorite thing is whenever a new review pops up on Goodreads or Amazon, and I'm like, oh my gosh, someone read it and they took, the 5-10 minutes out of their day to go review this. So other people could see that either it has, like, the story has legitimacy, or it was a fun read, or it was a scary read, or whatever. And that is so affirming to hear. And there, even some that I've never met before are out there reading it. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool that I'm not just, it's not just family and friends that are reading it now. It's because I think I'm a good writer. And of course, family and friends are going to be like, yeah, no, you're good. Like, it's a good book. But to have strangers say, like, I was totally engrossed in the story, I loved the characters, or it was such a surprise, or the twist at the end, whatever it is, then that offers more legitimacy for me to be like, okay, so it's not just me who thinks I'm doing this right, because I want people to have an emotional response, even if their emotional response is like, it didn't do it for me. Okay, that's totally fine. Not every book's for everyone. But those instances where it's like, holy cow, I have a friend here at work who was like, oh my gosh, I didn't see the end of the favorite coming. It was such a cool twist. I loved it. It was it was like my top read of 2022. So it's like, okay, I'm not just looking at all of this through rose-colored glasses. It's legitimately, I'm at least an okay writer enough that some people like to read it. So I'm cool with that, and I enjoy that.
You mentioned earlier having to go back and sprinkle in details about what they look like or what street they were on and that kind of thing. But that's also what I like about your writing, because you're one of those authors that don't get in the way of your writing when you're telling the story, because you can be inundated with details all day long that don't matter. But you put enough in there so that we can imagine what people look like or what the environment feels like. It's not just an empty white room, right? But it's so easy to get lost into your book. Like, I was telling Tera that I started reading it yesterday and I could not put it down.
Well, it's interesting too, because it always bothers me whenever someone is describing something in a book and they're spending, an entire paragraphs talking about, like, the room they're in or the garden they're in, or what their work building looks like. And like, it's like, yes, that is relevant, but it also doesn't leave any room for my imagination, because if I say I'm in a garden of flowers or a garden of roses or whatever, like, oh, okay, like, I can picture that instantaneously, what that looks like. But if they say, like, I was in the garden of roses and the paths wound between rhododendrons and woolly lamb's ear and the roses and the begonias and all this kind of stuff, it's like, okay, I'm spending time now building this in my head, and it's not relevant. It's They're just say that it's full of flowers or full of colorful flowers or full of, bees and butterflies, whatever, and move on. And so that's something I'm glad that you think that, because that's really where I wanted to land, right in the middle of this. I'll let you imagine a lot of it, but I'm going to give you at least the banks of the river for you to imagine within. So that is very affirming. Thank you.
I mean, with you having to like flesh out what people look like and stuff before you sit down to write, do you have like an encyclopedia somewhere where you just keep all this information, or you just keep it in your head?
Yeah, most of it's in my head. Most of it was in my head. I have since started an encyclopedia of like characters. This is what they look like. This is how they sound. If they have an accent, I'll put that in there. Because with Eden Vertex, it was way too difficult to keep it all straight in my head. And then I started adding characters like I did in some of the other books, where it's like, oh, okay, I guess we have a new character now. And so I'd have to go back and write them in and be like, okay, so here's the new person. Here's what they look like, what they sound like, where they're from, that kind of a thing. And it's good. I wish I would have done it earlier, honestly, in my other books. It would have been a less pressure on me to keep everything straight, and more just, I just need to, look at my encyclopedia and see if I'm writing this person correctly or not.
I'm going to go back to the like world building, because that's the place that books lose me all the time, is when they go too in depth and I'm spending like hours. I just stop reading it. I'm just like, okay, I'll figure out what this world is. Like, let's start the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially like fantasy books, like at the beginning, it's like, here's the world of blah, blah, blah. And here are all the different regions and all the different races and all the different languages and all the different economic routes and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, okay, come on. What I want for my books is that is sprinkled throughout, instead of just like vomited at the beginning. Like, here's the entire world. Now you have to remember it all. Instead, it's like, here's what the world kind of looks like, and we're going to go to this character. And then they go over a rise and they see the city, or they meet a shopkeeper, and it is this type of species because they, came here from wherever. So you sprinkle those throughout. So you're building the world as the story progresses, instead of saying, here's my universe, ingest all of that, and also understand what's happening in the story or why all that's relevant. It's tricky to do. And I'm not successful all the time, but I try.
I feel like it's a history lesson. Like I'm doing school at the beginning of books, and I'm like, I don't want to like be back in high school where I'm having to learn all of this history.
I like take my notes and try and figure things out. I was going to ask you, Ty, being a fan of fantasy, and I know you love Wheel of Time, would you ever consider, do you have any desire to write like an epic or high fantasy at some point?
We've talked about my old fantasy book that I started writing when I was in 7th grade, What Comes from Betrayal, and that's still a working title. I have probably 100,000 words written in that, and it's probably hot garbage. But the world itself, like the characters and stuff, I miss them. Like in this it's a weird relationship you have with your characters. They really hold a special place in my writing mind, and I want to finish their story. I've considered writing a fantasy novel or repurposing that one, but everything right now is, I don't know. What I hate is like mainstream stuff. And so like the what is it? The dragon one, Rebecca Yarros' stuff is Fourth Wing. Yeah. Is super duper popular right now, which is awesome. Good for her. I'm almost like anti-popular. If it's popular right now, I'm definitely not going to write it. And so fantasy, I'd super be interested in writing it, but I've got to let it. Everybody needs to calm their tits a little about it for me to get right.
I mean, I have been enjoying Fourth Wing. Every few decades, some kind of like mainstream big series comes out, right? That everyone goes batshit about. And I just like the whole fandom aspect of it, right? I think that's the big draw for me, because people are making character art. People are like, they're just going bonkers. And so I think that part of it, the social aspect of it, is fun, but I totally feel you.
It is. It's really cool.
You said What Comes from Betrayal? Was that the title?
Yeah. So
it sounds very, it's an intriguing title. It sounds very Joe Abercrombie. I don't know if you've read his stuff.
Oh yeah. Yep. He's got some really cool stuff. The story is essentially like Legend of Zelda, is the world that I built it in, unfortunately. But there's this like hidden prince that's the main character. You find out really early on that that's him. and he lives with these forest people, and he grows up and he realizes like the people that I thought were my family aren't my family. The people who I thought were my friends aren't my friends, or they're my enemies. And so there's a lot of this stuff going on. I mean, I've already got book 2 planned out too, so it's like I might as well finish it. But it started. I mean, I started writing that when I was playing Ocarina of Time. I was reading Wheel of Time. I was reading Sword of Truth. So there's so much of that influence in there, where you have really deep characters, but a 7th grader couldn't write a deep enough character. And so I'd have to go back and I'd have to like really look at it. But I do love that world. I have a map somewhere framed that I made and drew. Just little 7th grade Ty.
Art definitely inspires art, and I've talked to quite a few authors who come back to that original idea that they love and they can't let go of those characters. And they end up repurposing that in a new story, and it ends up being amazing. So it'll be cool to see if you can pull off something like that.
I would like to. I think I'll see at the end of this 5-year contract, because I've already got books 6 and 7 taken care of, 8 and 9, and probably 10 I have ideas for. And so after that, then my contract can renew, and I may then jump into, unless there's demand for like the Dadirri Saga or the Dominus trilogy to keep going, then I might do something that's a little bit more of a deviation from sci-fi. I might do high fantasy. I think it would be really fun to write. At least I had fun writing it when I was actually in it.
You rattled off a number of future books. How many other stories are you writing with Four Horsemen?
I'm finishing this 5th book now, and there will be 5 more. So I've got 10 total books.
Okay. Non-related, what are you playing, watching, reading right now?
I am reading Red Rising. I'm on the 3rd book.
Nice.
And that's been, I loved book 1. Book 2 was a bit of a letdown, and book 3 is better than book 2. So it's a great story. It's a lot of fun to read. I recently was playing Dead Space. I got Harry Potter or Hogwarts Legacy, and I've been kind of playing that in my free time whenever I have it. And I also was reading rereading Doohickey by Stephen King. Also, it's my favorite one. So whenever I'm bored or something, I'll just pop that into the car and be like, oh yeah, I remember this part. Oh, this is such a good scene.
No, I did play Hogwarts Legacy. It is so addictive. It's like the ultimate escapism, right? I just like the setting so much.
Yeah. Like, I want to be there. Yeah. Fly around and catch little animals in my little suitcase. Yeah. Heck yeah. That's awesome.
It's a fun little break. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any shows that you're watching lately?
So I usually just watch what Kanye wants to watch, which is The Bachelor or The Golden Bachelor or Bachelor in Paradise. And we drink margaritas and eat chips and salsa, and that's fun. My shows, though, are shows that she will not watch. So I watched Devs recently. That was really good on Hulu. There's a show called From that I've started. That was a recommendation from a buddy of mine. And they're usually just like scarier shows. And Kanye doesn't like to feel scared, so I have to watch those on my quote unquote time off.
Wait, am I remembering the conversation earlier correctly? Like, she will say what she wants to watch, and she also falls asleep during that as well.
Yeah, that's her. That's her. Hey, I really want to watch this show, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. And so I'm like, hey, wake up! I'm awake, or I'm ready to go to bed. So.
Married life, yeah.
Yeah, for real. I mean, she worked very hard, so I totally get it. I used to get frustrated with it, but at this point now, it's like, what do you expect? And at that point, she's either like, you can play your game, or you can watch what you want to watch, or we can go to bed. And for me, I'm usually like, yeah, let's go to bed. I'm tired because it's 11:30 or 12.
Full days need that energy.
Yeah.
Well, Ty, we're coming up on time, so I did want to give you the opportunity to, let everyone know where they can pick up a copy of your book.
Yeah, so you can get it at any major retailer. So if you go to Walmart.com or Target or Barnes & Noble, Amazon, you can also get them from there. My publisher's website is fourhorsemenpublications.com. You can order it direct from them. And they have each a paperback, hardback, ebook version, and then audio for The Bench and The Favorite and The Shadow List should be releasing this month. So you can get kind of whatever format you want.
And the release day for your upcoming book, Convergence of the Gods?
Yes, that is going to be on January 24th. I should be getting an ARC link, which is an advanced reader copy. And so that's going to be exciting to kind of get some feedback from other readers, but that should be happening pretty soon. But yes, January 24th, 2024, book 4 of the Dadirri Saga comes out. Pretty wild. And
where can people find you in case they're wanting to come to any of those things that you might be attending?
I'm very active on TikTok, Ty Carlson author. I'm on Twitter as, you can search Ty Carlson, but my handle is TC Rivers because that's what I wanted my pen name to be. You remember that? I talked about it last time. And then Facebook is Ty Carlson author as well. Instagram is TC Rivers 85. I'm not super active on there as an author, but I'll post up or like share reels or whatever from my Facebook page to there.
Ty, I never pictured you as a TikTok person, but like you're on there and it's very engaging and I enjoy watching your TikToks and I'm like never knew Ty Carlson, TikToker.
Yeah, I mean anymore it's like it's either here's the stuff that I'm doing, you like pick a niche and you just like double down into it, or you do whatever random stuff and one of your videos goes viral. I'm still waiting for that to happen, but it is fun. There's a great writing community and reading community on TikTok. I will say that. They're pretty cool.
That Twitter X, yeah. It's been so fun watching your journey the last couple of years. So thank you so much for joining us. And it's so great to see your face on our show again. And we're excited to read what you got going on next. So
I'm excited to be here. I always love talking to you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye, everyone.